All right. Hey, everybody. Hope you're doing well today. Welcome into the Worship Hangovers Bible study that we're doing this morning. Excited for that. I'm so happy that you're here with us and doing this. We're going through the book of Judges. I know it's been a few days since we were together. Sorry, I was out of town for a few days and everything, but I'm back in the saddle again. And we are back with Samson today, right? We started talking about Samson Friday last week, and this is, he's been the guy you've been waiting for. I know you've been waiting for Samson throughout the whole book, okay? And I understand that, right? Everybody, whenever they think of Judges, Samson is the guy that comes to their mind. If they think of anything about the book of Judges, right? Usually Samson is the one that comes up because he is the big bad dude, right? He's like the super strong man who has super long hair, and you know the whole story about him. Well, you will by the end of this, right? Or by the end of this study anyway. Maybe not today. Drinking the Black Bear blend. I believe it's by Walla Walla. Man, it's super, super good. Thank you for the gift. People who gave this to me. It was a gift, so thank you. It tastes like life and unicorns. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. What we're gonna do today. What we're gonna do today is we're gonna talk a little bit more about Samson's life. Remember, Samson's a Nazarite, right? Like he was set apart by God, right? That's true. And I say that as a question because sometimes whenever you look at Samson's life, you're going to realize he doesn't look like a person who's been set apart by God, and he doesn't act like a person who's been set apart by God, and he does not uphold the Nazarite vow as well as he should, right? What's the Nazarite vow? The Nazarite vow is to, first of all, stay away from wine. Second of all, stay away from anything that is dead. You have to remain clean, right? Ritually clean. So you have to stay away from things that are clean. What's the third part of the Nazarite vow? Oh yeah, you can't cut your hair, right? I mean, that's really what's happening here with that Nazarite vow. So stay away from things that are dead. Don't drink any wine. Don't cut your hair. That's what we see here. So let's talk about that. Let's see how Samson does. Okay, Samson chapter 14 or Judges chapter 14. See, even I equate the two things. Judges chapter 14, I'm going to begin reading at verse 1, and I'm sure we'll stop here and there. We're going to do the whole chapter today. Hope you're ready for that. Judges chapter 14, verse 1 says this. It says, Samson went down to Timnah, and at Timnah he saw one of the daughters of the Philistines. And then he came up and he told his father and mother, I saw one of the daughters of the Philistines at Timnah. Now get her for me as my wife. Okay, first of all, what? Like, okay, Samson, I get it, you're a big bad dude, but I don't know about this, okay? Once again, as you can see, over time, the judges of Israel begin to act like a monarchy, right? They just think that they can do as they please. And so Samson's the next judge, and Samson's like, that woman's my wife, go get her. Okay, I mean that's more or less what he's doing here. He's acting like a monarchy, which is incredibly insane. Now his father and mother in verse 3, his father and mother said to him, "Is there not a woman among the daughters of your relatives or among all our people that you must go take a wife from the uncircumcised Philistines?" That's a very fair question, right? This has very little to do, like it really doesn't have anything to do with the color of this girl's skin or anything like that. Like sometimes today in 2020, whenever we read that verse, we're like, wow, his parents are so prejudiced, right? This has everything to do with what God had commanded, like what God wanted of his people. God did not want his people to marry into other tribes of other faiths, right? God didn't want that for his people. God really, really wanted his people to be a pure line. That's what he wanted. And Samson, by marrying this Philistine, right, his parents even highlight it, the uncircumcised Philistines, like he is marrying outside of the faith, okay, is what's happening here. Today, we still talk about that. Like, we don't necessarily talk about it in regard to nationality of origin. We talk about it in regards of being equally yoked, right? You don't want to be unequally yoked in your marriage relationship. We'll say that a lot of times because if you have faith, you want to marry someone who shares your faith. That's the best part of a marriage relationship. That's the strongest part of a marriage relationship, is to be with somebody who shares your faith. And so his parents are like, isn't there someone, like, Israel's pretty big, dude. Isn't there someone in Israel that you could marry, right? And Samson says, still in verse 3, right? Samson said to his father, get her for me, for she's right in my eyes. In other words, you silly old man. You don't know what you're talking about. I looked at her. I like her. She's right in my eyes. Notice that there's no logic happening in Samson's life at this point. There's no common sense, right? It's purely reactional living. That's what's happening in Samson's life right now. He is reacting to whatever's around him. He's living in the reactions of his life. That is going to haunt Samson in every day of his life. Okay, it's going to haunt him. It's all reaction at this point. It's all emotional, and it's just chaotic whenever it is, right? You can't really trust your reactions. That's why whenever you're reacting, you have to pump the brakes and slow down and just take a breath and think through some things. So Samson is reacting. Get her for me, for she's right in my eyes. Verse 4, his father and mother didn't know that it was from the Lord, for he was seeking an opportunity against the Philistines. At that time, the Philistines ruled over Israel. Now, I don't think that that's telling us that the Lord wanted Samson to marry outside of his tribe, right? I don't think that that's what that verse is telling us. I think what it's more telling us is that the Lord is seeking an opportunity over the Philistines, right? That's what God is doing. And even though Samson is breaking the will of God by marrying outside of his national bounds at this point, outside of his group of people, at the same time, it's still within the higher will of God, as far as like God's desires that the Philistines would be destroyed. And so even whenever we are acting in defiance of God, God can still use us to complete his ultimate will. And I believe that that's what that verse is saying. Verse 5, then Samson went down with his father and his mother to Timnah, and they came to the vineyards of Timnah, and behold, a young lion came toward him roaring. That's scary, right? Then the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him, and although he had nothing in his hand, he tore the lion in pieces as one tears a young goat. I couldn't even tear a goat, so like that's really impressive to me. But he did not tell his father or mother what he had done. Then he went what he had done. Now, here's the problem with this, okay? Here's the problem with this. What was the Nazarite vow? Don't drink wine. Don't cut your hair. Don't go near anything that's dead. And he just caused a corpse, okay? That's what happened here. Like when he tore that lion apart, he caused a corpse. So now he's been near this dead thing. Of course, there are opportunities within his culture. There are opportunities within his Nazarite vow for him to be made right. What he should have done after this is he should have left where he was. He should have gone to the temple. He should have gone through a ritual cleansing. It would have taken 8 days. It would have taken the shaving of his head. It would have taken repentance. It would have taken a burnt offering. But he would have been fine, right? He was, absolutely he was protecting himself. There's nothing really wrong with what he did as far as killing the lion. What's wrong with what he did is he didn't tell anybody, and he didn't finish what he started here. He just killed the lion and then he kept it a secret, right? Verse 7, then he went down and he talked with the woman, and she was right in Samson's eyes. We keep having that. He just follows what he sees. He follows his instincts. It doesn't really matter what wisdom says. It doesn't really matter what God says. It doesn't really matter what those who are with him says. Samson just follows his instincts. He is emotionally led in every way. Verse 8, after some days, he returned to take her, and he turned aside to see the carcass of the lion, and behold, there was a swarm of bees in the body of the lion and honey, and he scraped it out into his hands, and he went on eating as he went, and he came to his father and mother, and he gave some to them, and they ate, but he did not tell them that he had scraped the honey from the carcass of the lion. Still more secrets, still more hiding. And he's not even really ashamed, right? In feeding his mom and his dad this honey, he actually makes them ritually unclean as well. And he doesn't even tell them. He has little care for his own health or safety, for his own faith, for his own relationship with God. And he has absolutely no care, apparently, for his parents' relationships with God. either. Verse 10, he went down to the woman, and Samson prepared a feast there, for so the young men used to do. And as soon as the people saw him, they brought the 30 companions to be with him, Now, this feast that they're talking about there, obviously it's happening in a vineyard, right? And this feast that he's talking about is the young men used to do. This is like a crazy drunken brawl that Samson is building here. Now, what's the Nazarite vow? Don't go near anything dead. Whoops, I did. Don't cut your hair, okay? And don't drink alcohol. And of course, the assumption that Scripture is building for us here is that Samson is surrounding his life with strong drink at this point. Right? Verse 11, as soon as the people saw him, Samson, they brought 30 companions to be with him. And Samson said to the 30 companions, now, let me now put a riddle to you. If you can tell me what it is within the 7 days of the feast and find it out, then I will give you 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothes. But if you cannot tell me what it is, then you shall give me 30 linen garments and 30 changes of clothes. And they said to him, put your riddle that we may hear it. And he said to them, out of the eater came something to eat, out of the strong came something sweet. And in 3 days they could not solve the riddle. On the fourth day they said to Samson's wife, entice your husband to tell us what the riddle is, lest we burn you and your father's house with fire. Have you invited us here to impoverish us? And Samson's wife wept over him and said, you only hate me. You do not love me. You've put a riddle to my people, and you've not told me what it is. And Samson said to her, behold, I have not told my father nor my mother, and shall I tell you? She wept before him the 7 days that their feast lasted, and on the 7th day he told her, because she pressed him hard. And she told the riddle to her people. And the men of the city said to him on the 7th day before the sun went down, what is sweeter than honey, and what is stronger than a lion? Now listen, here's what's happening here. Samson is pretending to himself that he's the smartest person in the room, right? That's what's happening here with this party. And so he makes this bet with these 30 young men. Listen, if you can solve my riddle in 7 days, then I will give you all of these clothes, right? I will give you all of these clothes. But if you can't, then you will give me all of these clothes. Of course, 30 changes of clothes in that culture is extremely extravagant. Like, you're talking extreme wealth, right? That he is trying to acquire here. That's what's happening with Samson. He's trying to embarrass these people, and he's trying to take their resources, and he's trying to grow in his wealth. That's what's happening here. And so they couldn't solve the riddle, right? There's no way they could have solved that riddle. Nobody knew the answer to it. So they leverage his wife. You figure out what the riddle means and tell us, or we will burn you and we will burn your father's house, right? Like, they threaten her to her life. And so she does. She does just that. She is weepy and sad, and like everything you don't want on a honeymoon, she is. And finally, on the 7th day, Samson tells her the answer to the riddle, and she shares it. And these men come back with the answer: what is sweeter than honey, and what is stronger than a lion? Still, you can see the foolishness of Samson. Why does he gotta strike this bet? I don't know. It doesn't make any sense at all. And Samson said to them, if you had not plowed with my heifer, you would not have found out my riddle. In other words, if you would have just left my wife alone, you wouldn't have known. You cheated, right? Is what Samson's basically saying here. Verse 19, and the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him, and he went down to Ashkelon, and he struck down 30 men of the town, and he took their spoil, and he gave the garments to those who had told the riddle. In hot anger, he went back to his father's house, and Samson's wife was given to his companion, who had been his best man. So, first of all, it says, I know it says the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him. Okay, don't equate Samson's violence with what the Lord is wanting from him. Okay, don't equate Samson's violence with what the Lord is wanting from him. The Lord is wanting Samson to lead Israel to overpower the Philistines. That's what God is trying to do with Samson, right? God is trying to get rid of the Philistines, right? And so whenever it says that the Spirit of the Lord rushed upon him, what it really means is Samson once again, in some ways, aligned with the ultimate will of what God wanted, right? The ultimate will of what God wanted is God wanted the Philistines gone. Now, what Samson does as a response to this riddle situation, that is not what God wanted him to do, right? The way that the Philistines were strucken down at the hand of Samson here was not the method that God wanted to utilize, but it still accomplished the purpose that God was going for in some sense, right? It was still somewhat towards a purpose. I don't know if that makes sense or not, okay? If it doesn't make sense, you can ask questions and I'll try to clarify that. God's ultimate will be fulfilled even if Samson doesn't follow God's intentional will for Samson's life. Samson's living his life in opposition with God's will for Samson, but he still is accomplishing God's ultimate will on the smaller. So that's what that is. Sorry, that's not super clear. If I had time to write this as a sermon, it would be a lot clearer. But what I do want you to know is that once again we see Samson causing 30 more corpses, and he takes their clothes and he gives them to those men. And really think about it. So these men receive these clothes. Are they going to be able to wear them? I mean, people are going to know where these clothes came from after they see these 30 naked men, right? And it kind of embarrasses these 30 guys. And it's just kind of a nightmare. Samson's life at this point is just kind of a nightmare of overreaction, of not following God's ultimate will, of not seeking his real purpose, of just kind of wasting everything God has allowed him and created him to be. And that's where we're at. And then we're left in verse 20 with this cliffhanger. Samson's wife was given to his companion, who had been his best man. We're going to see Samson's reaction to that tomorrow. Thank you so much for watching. If you like this video, give us a thumbs up. If you have any questions or comments, you can always leave them in the comments section. Of course, I would love it if you'd subscribe, and you can click the bell icon to receive notifications when we go live. And last but not least, if you find these videos helpful, if you'd share it with just one person that you think would enjoy them, I would greatly appreciate it. That's it.